So Nick and Kim, thank you so much for making the time to join us this morning. And like we said off camera, that sometimes people don't realize how real life is and how real our journeys are until we share it and they see us unedited. So if you can tell us what's your journey with Josh been? What led you to going to the doctor and hearing this diagnosis that you received as a family?
You know the most details, so you better go.
Okay. When Josh was about just turned 2, he started getting pains in his legs, and he would start having these fevers for no apparent reason. And he would start to cry, and they would just be sore, and he just couldn't walk, and he would limp, and he was just miserable. And then it would be fine for like 2 or 3 days, and then it would start all over again. And we basically had him just normal painkillers, like we had Nurofen that we gave him. We took him to a doctor, and they thought maybe it was just some form of arthritis, so they checked all his joints and things like that. But then bruising started to appear on his legs, and obviously when you, as uninformed as what we were, carrying on with our normal daily lives with healthy children, you just think it's just a silly bruise. Oh, they knocked their leg somewhere, or he tripped and he fell, he's a boy, that's what they do. And then when the fever started becoming more and more frequent, and it got to a point where he wasn't even able to walk, he couldn't use his legs because it was just too painful, we went back to our GP again, and she was like, there's something that's not right here. So she ordered a blood test to be done straight away. And then I still remember sitting. Sorry.
I know. You're muted for the gaps.
Yeah.
So we went to his normal pediatrician. We had the blood tests. She recommended that we have blood tests done. And she had a contact. Was that at Red Cross at that stage, or was that still? Yeah, so that was straight to Red Cross where they did the blood tests. And they said, well, the first round of blood tests came in that it was maybe not, maybe it is, but they can't really tell. And we then started our journey at Red Cross. And at first it was misdiagnosed as autoimmune type of disease, of arthritis type thing, that I cannot remember the name for now.
They diagnosed it as CRMO, yes, which is chronic recurrent multifocal osteomyelitis, which had all the same symptoms as leukemia, but it wasn't a leukemia. It's more of a juvenile arthritis symptom that actually only occurs in young girls, so which threw them completely when they diagnosed Josh with this. So basically, we went through the misdiagnosing stage for over 10 months, where he was left untreated while he already had leukemia. So low platelets, bruising, fevers, all those type of things. And they couldn't figure out what it was until his eye socket started to swell. And then they did a biopsy of his eye, and they found that the cancer, or the leukemia cells, cancer cells, had actually been hiding in his eye sockets, because his bone marrow came back negative, his blood results came back fine, even the lumbar punch they gave him, the fluid all came back fine, as if there were no issues. The biopsies of the lesions in his bones that they did through the ultrasounds and all the bone density scans all came back negative. So that is why it was so difficult for them to diagnose him. And then that basically started our journey and our joining the Red Cross G1 family, which literally had people, pathologists, doctors, experts in America, in UK, could not understand how a kid of 2 years old could have acute myeloid leukemia, because it's not something that children get. So that is what stumped them, and that's how our journey began.
Sure. Wow. And I mean, so, we were just speaking earlier about the fact that, Zayan was diagnosed with thalassemia. Vivian had also a very rare form of blood disorder called PNH. And then Josh, you were saying AML, acute myeloid leukemia. I think that is probably one of the most educational moments for me, is the vast array of blood disorders that exist, and that are treatable with a stem cell transplant. We have a very minimalistic understanding of the vast number of people that are impacted by blood disorders, and then you're saying in this case something that, like leukemia, that is a bit better understood, still not so understood in terms of the type of leukemia that impacted your son that isn't common to children. And so you were really fortunate that his sister was a match for him so that he could have a transplant. How long ago was that?
Transplant is now just over 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just as an extra note as well, his sister's name is Zoe, which in Greek means life.
Wow.
And it just shows us, also just added to that our plans are, God knows our plans even way before they happen. He knew what we could be facing.
And she was the only one that was actually tested. He's got three sisters. They tested her first. And everything, when they showed us the results, everything was exactly the same. Every marker, every comma, point, comma, whatever, everything was identical to his. So they had spoken to us about haplo, which wasn't an option for Joshua, which was where, should they not find a donor, they would have to use one nickel eye, whichever one is closest to him. And they were like, we can't actually even afford to do haplo. We have to do a full 100% match transplant. It can't even be 90%. So we were very fortunate that the one person they did test was his sister, and she was an absolute match.
Wow, that's amazing. Sure.
Yeah.
And I mean, and again, when we look at the statistics, because that's what we deal with in our line of work, that's a 25% chance of that likelihood happening. And we in fact celebrated, I think all of you know Massimo. We celebrated with him his 7-year post-transplant anniversary this month as well. And he has 3 sisters, and the one was no match, the one was 50%, and the other one was 100%. So, and I think for me, if I look at all the awareness work that we do, so many people tell us, I'll register if one of my family members need a transplant, but there is no guarantee that you're going to match your family member.
Absolutely.
Vivian, do you have siblings?
Yes, Kim, I have 3 brothers. They were all 3 tested, and none of them was a match. So, yeah.
Yeah, and Zayan, your sisters, were they tested for you at all?
They were tested, but none of them are matches. It's just Mishka is perfectly fine, but Rania, she is a carrier. So
Okay.
she to marry the correct person and her blood and whole. But unfortunately, none of them were matches, which is surprising considering the fact that from Berlin we found a 100% match.
Yeah.
But that has happened.
Yeah, that is amazing. And Nick and Kim, just to sort of end off our call, is there anything that you would want to say to others considering registering as donors now, just from a parent's perspective and the journey that you've been through? What would you say to encourage people to actually become donors?
Go first.
I think with the pool that is as small as it is of available donors, I think we were very blessed to have a donor in the family, but what if we didn't? An available donor could have then hopefully saved his life if his sister couldn't. So if anything, you're able to save a life, whether you're able to save a life.
I think a lot of people still have the misconception of how the whole stem cell bone marrow process is actually done. So when we've spoken to friends and we've asked them to go and register, they still have this concept of them injecting or drilling into their back, and they're so petrified of it being painful. When in actual fact, to register is literally a swab of the mouth. And a process of stem cell donation, which at the time our 6-year-old daughter could do, is literally as if you're donating blood. But because people are so misinformed or uninformed or uneducated, it's the fear of it still being the old way that is actually the biggest prevention of people going to register. That's what I've found, because I've seen the genuine response when I say, no, that's not how it's done. And when we show videos and when we show Zoe, who's running around like a crazy thing and who's absolutely fine, and who was laying with her Care Bears eating chips while donating stem cells, it sort of changes people's perception of how it's actually done.
Yeah.
So I think it's, if people can actually understand and know how easy it actually is and how painless it actually is, it would change so many people's lives and afford so many more people a second chance.
Yeah. And I know you made a video of your daughter when she was donating stem cells, eh? And you've shared that on your social platforms. It's, I think probably the most insightful moment that that anybody could have to really understand what it is that we're talking about. So thank you even for doing that, because that's very personal for your family. And you know, for sharing that publicly. I think it's definitely, I mean, it's one of the videos I've referenced to say to people, go and check, you know. So, so thank you for doing that. We appreciate you.
You're welcome.
Awesome. Thank you. So again, just in celebration of World Marrow Donor Day on Saturday, and to say thank you to donors worldwide, of which there are more than 37 million and only about 76,000 in South Africa. I think, yes, we want to encourage everybody to please become donors. And on behalf of those that are already registered and on behalf of patients, we want to say,
thank you.
Thank you. In course.
Thank you to the Sunflower Fund for the work that you guys do. Thank you very much.